Hello, I am CouchCube and we're going to look at this new Elden Ring patch 1.05, I'm going to say. It's giving it the beans with the old performance and stopping the stuttering and changes in frame rates during the performance mode and the quality mode. Now the quality mode is what we're going to look at mostly in this video because that's where I felt a lot of the frame drops existed. So we'll switch that over and I'll show you some of the performance stuff at the end. It was never really a problem on the PlayStation 5 anyway, but that 4K, the high res quality mode was a bit crap. What I mean is it's just not pegged at 30 and it dips when things get very busy. This section was particularly bad. Going down that slope or being in this section of the castle was just pretty stuttery and it hasn't really fixed much, and I think that's because there's quite a lot of very large enemies in and around that area, and a lot of this could be to do with background loading, thus causing a visual stagger. Now one of the ways to check a frame rate or to do it without subscribing to Digital Foundry is to keep your eyes on some of the background furniture, foliage, NPCs, whatever, when you're doing a constant pan. So you want to make sure you're swinging that camera at a fixed speed and then just look at what's going past. They don't swing at a nice, smooth, constant speed. It's fluctuating between, I don't know, maybe 28 to 30 frames. There's something going on because it's the fluctuation that makes the human eye notice that change. If it's fixed, doesn't really matter if it's 30 or 60. Obviously you can tell a difference in smoothness, but once that number's locked, you can kind of relax a bit more on a visual level. And when the fights get really intense and your frame rates are dropping to like 20 a second and then maybe back to 30, it will disrupt your control input a little bit as well. So this is quite a big subject. Why don't you just put the performance mode on, Coop? What's your big issue? Because I own a PlayStation 5 and a 4K TV and I want to see this game looking awesome, and we don't at the moment in that Fidelity mode. Everything is totally amazing over on the performance side, but that's by the by. I think this mode should be boosted more and hopefully we will see that coming up. But with this 1.05, they haven't got to the promised land just yet. I'm also calling in as many NPCs or manifested help as possible because this was also an area that caused the engine to kind of get in a bit of a panic, especially with your outside. That's another thing, is there's a pattern here, and most of the performance issues come with big boss fights in an outside area where you've got a lot of enemies or NPC placements in and around, and it just kind of chugs the whole system. This is not a Blighttown situation, not by a long stretch, and if you're not aware of that analogy, that was a section in a Souls game that was really huge. It was kind of like on the side of this mountain, and there was like a wooden village, and it was very densely populated with enemies, and it ran at like 10 frames per second, and everybody was like, what is going on? And From really tried to fix it, but it isn't fixed. That they never got on top of that issue. I think that was just maybe the designers biting off a little bit more than they could have chewed on a power level with the system they were going to run it on.
Hold on there, Mr. Muncher.
This, what we're looking at here, is of course still on the Fidelity mode, and it is bearable, but it's not 30 frames per second. And it's very difficult for me to actually get it on YouTube working properly because of its weird compression issues. You'll often upload a video that looks one way and then you'll watch it on YouTube and it looks completely different. You'll have to just trust me on this, that it was workable, it wasn't disturbing me, and of course this fight is one of the more notorious because of its location. Let's talk about this very quickly because this was an issue with me as well. Some of the earlier camps and stages were having some massive stutter issues on that Fidelity mode. This has actually been cleaned up a little bit. What I'm noticing is when there's a large amount of smaller enemies on screen, that it kind of does cope a bit better. And when you've got your manifestations out, things were all right. They weren't completely like, what on earth am I playing a 16-bit Mega Drive game? This is performance mode, and straight up, look at the characters' fluidity on their movesets, and everything just seems a hell of a lot more solid. We haven't got that lovely, very granular detail, particle and crispness on distance, but it's kind of ignorable because of the intensity of this game. But I can see a huge jump, especially with this combat scenario with those two modes. That brings me on to Torrent and the mount gameplay, and of course travelling around the open world map at high speed would cause a lot of strange pop-in issues, and you'd see huge dips in frame rates depending on what locations you'd go to. This is all in Fidelity mode, and we're still looking at Fidelity mode now. We will switch it out in a second. This is okay. Again, it needs fixing more. It's just weird. If you go near a busy area, you just see a dip. I would love to see this pegged. Performance mode is absolutely stunning, smooth, crisp. You do see a little bit more distance blurring and of course a slight amount of pop-in, but that is just something you're going to have to take with the territory. I think with a game of this size, that much detail in that open world map, and of course it being From's first sort of venture into this style of game, I think they've coped really well. And of course stick with the channel, because I reckon we're going to see another update really soon that might just pinch that gap that we've got on that Fidelity mode with those frame rate dips. I have been Couch Coop, and of course I will see you down there. We've got the local co-op top campaign this coming up. I swear it's taken so long. See you there!